right here. Welcome to another episode of Unsavory Fellow. My name's Nick James, and I'm here with my good friend and guest, Nick Fouquet, #1 hat designer in the world.
Thanks. What an intro.
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
But it's
honored.
kind of true, isn't it?
I mean, trying to be humble about it, but I mean, maybe. I mean, I appreciate you calling me out like that. But yeah, I mean, I've been around the block, been doing this a while, and I've definitely made some amazing pieces for some notable and amazing people. So yeah, man, I'll take that claim.
Yeah.
I'll hold it down.
I wanted to, other than you being a buddy and stuff, I've always thought it's just fascinating when someone can take something like making a hat and turn it into this incredible business and nobody has any idea. Like when I met you, I didn't understand. I thought that was like, I don't know, I probably met you 15 years ago maybe.
Was it that long ago? Okay.
Probably. And I remember, how long have you been doing the hats?
God, yeah, it's probably been, oh man, I've been doing it 13 years, something
So
like
I remember
that.
somebody goes, "Oh, he makes hats," and I remember going, "That's stupid." You know,
Thanks, man. No, I get it. I mean, it's super arbitrary of
yeah. I thought, how's he making? What do you mean he's making hats?
I mean, yeah, look, it was like something that was so niche and so unexpected, and I totally understand like that sentiment and that feeling. I think it's like
It's
kind of
naive
like
by me, super naive.
yeah, I mean, I feel like it's somebody that's like, yeah, I make socks. It kind of sounds like ridiculous too, but like, I guess there's something for everybody, right? Like, I mean, these are like niche items. I mean, everyone wears socks. No one needs to wear a hat. But the thing is like, it's something that was like a passion that became an obsession and then a business. And it was like really out of left field. I mean, like, my story is kind of untraditional. I went to school for environmental science and sustainable development. So like my path was looking more like conservation, renewable energy. And I was taking chemistry classes and biology classes
Really?
and was, yeah. I mean, and that was like the path and direction I was going. And then I just had like a natural like inclination to just, I always like love fashion and I love style. And a time where it was like really kind of like not straight, if you were like into fashion, like back in the day when I was like, people were like that's.
But you also started before that. You had a career as a model, right?
In tandem, I mean, yes and no. Like after I graduated, like I lived in New York City. I worked at bars. I did the whole thing, and like I tried because I was like, I just want like my dad is a model. My dad's a very successful model.
Yeah.
But it's not really an industry that is like nepotism. If you're like not the good looking, it's not like the movie industry. Like you don't need to be like good looking. If they'll be like.
But you're good looking. You're super good looking.
Yeah, but I feel like no, but it was like I grew up. I was like really overweight, buck teeth.
Really?
I was like the moth that turned into the butterfly a little bit, and like so I was really always insecure. My dad was like the archetype of beauty, so I was like, well, it looks like a really easy job. You travel the world and you get paid a lot of money, but like I'd go to the agencies, and at the time they were like, "You're too fat." I was like really demoralized.
Really?
And then, yeah, but like what happened is
like how fat? Like when you say I was too fat.
well, this was like when I was a kid. I mean, I was just sort of like, I wasn't like the Abercrombie model with the 6-pack abs. Like, I drank and did drugs and like partied and like didn't really take care of myself and like was not in peak performance and peak shape, when at the time, like you got in that industry, like that was like for males like the beauty norm. You'd be like that Bruce Weber, like old like American looking like 6-pack like rip, and it wasn't me, know. But anyways, like what happened is really when I stopped drinking and doing drugs, like I actually started to look better, like a lot of people tend to do. And in the midst of that, I was also starting. Oh, man, I'm like jumping.
That's okay.
Like I'm like jumping around to so many different things, but to answer your question of the modeling thing, it actually came in tandem like while I was creating my business, and that was what was helping me supplement sort of like the beginning phases of like my my lifestyle and also my business. So like I would make money, and then it would help support my lifestyle and then continue to support like the business, which was really like my passion and wanted to do. And I remember like my agent being like, you need to go on this casting call. And I was like, fuck this, dude, I'm done. She's like, no, you need to go. I'm like, this is like going nowhere. I mean, not nowhere. Like I was able to do Ralph Lauren, and like I was a guest model, and I was a Levi's model. That's big. Yeah, it was.
That's big stuff.
I did a shoot with Kate Moss and Mario Testino. They like flew me to Rome, and
you were a model. You were a real model, like I said in the intro video that I made yesterday.
Yeah, no, I had a stint, dude. I had a run, and it was fucking awesome. And I traveled and got to finally go to those places that I wanted to go to, like the Bahamas, and like. And but the thing is like really funny when I think back on it, is that when I was on those sets and it's like what I wanted, and like, yeah, the money was great, but there was I was looking at it and there was no true like trajectory for like a real future in the industry. Right. Granted, like my dad has continued to do it, but that's like the anomaly, and like, and I love him and I respect him for, going down that path. But like, I was envious and jealous of like, the photographer and the photographer's assistant and the stylist and the set designers. And I was like, these guys are busy doing stuff, like really like in a team, like creating this. I'm just like the object that's there getting photographed. It kind of sucked, right? And I was like, I want to create, because like to be a model is sort of like a vapid way of being, Mm-hmm. And it was really, I'm grateful for it, but I was jealous of everybody else on set.
Wow. I've never heard that. I mean, that's a complete different twist on it,
Yeah,
that's interesting, because
it's like they were building careers for themselves.
But a lot of times, I think even whether you're on a movie set or a modeling shoot or something like that, some of those people are they're just sort of. It seems to me like a lot of times they're treated to be sort of not heard. You're over here, get out of the. You know what I mean? Whoever's holding the
Yeah, I mean, look, dude, I wasn't like, my ambition wasn't to be the guy holding the boom.
Right. But like, but those are careers.
But those, they develop into like, you start like, look, you're the assistant to the photographer or second or third assistant. And one day you get to a career where you're like the photographer. Yeah. And you're like really crafting, you're doing your craft. And I think there's something like really beautiful in that. So I was just always like, kind of like, after a while I was like, dude, this is going nowhere. How
did you go from then what you graduated? How did you go from that into this? Like, how come you didn't pursue
what, like TV and
no like when you were what you studied in college? What was it that you were studying?
Environmental science and sustainable
development.
development.
How come you didn't go into that?
I mean, I felt like I wanted to do a bit of like at the time also, like I wanted to do something, like I wanted to do something in the arts and even furthermore, like back then, I'm telling you, when was this? Man, this must have been 20 years ago, right? Like environmental science and sustainable development, like renewable energy and that whole path wasn't really developed. Like solar and wind energy were just like kind of in beta phase. It's not like when Tesla really started to come out, like the movement for environmental science and sustainable development was like being an anthropologist. Like it's just not really was like a career back then. And so I had a natural inclination of wanting to do style and fashion. Maybe it's because like my father's a super fashionable guy. He's like always, he's just was like so chic and amazing. And at a young age, I'd always like tailor my clothes and like alter them with the seamstress, and like always wanted to have like my own identity in fashion and clothing. So like, and still to this day, I pride myself on like changing a lot of like and I've done it for like forever.
So do you feel like there was an influence?
Yeah, there's like totally an influence, just because of like how he would like put things together, and I picked that up from him, and I loved it, because to me it's like the clothes you wear is sort of like the story you're telling the people that you're meeting. If you're coming in and like cut off shorts and a Hawaiian shirt, like you're saying something, right?
Right.
And clothes is to me is
What
like,
is that? What do you think that's saying? Let's just say if you're in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts, what is that saying?
I'm super lazy, dude. Like, you know. But
I set you guys up.
sorry guys. Sorry guys, I wasn't looking over there.
Made me wear this shirt.
He did. We forced it on him.
All right, that's our uniform.
Yeah. Oh man. But
So he had, and let me ask you this about him too, because since he was a huge model and still is.
Yeah.
I know who your dad is. I remember because I had a little stint as a model. Didn't last long. I got fired, but your dad, I knew exactly who your dad was. Now, is he naturally fashionable, or did he become fashionable after becoming a model?
no, he's always been fashionable.
So he was always
He was always
snappy.
chic. Yeah, he was always like, he always looked, you know, he wasn't a slob. He like,
Yeah.
you know, he knew how to dress, and that's an art. Like,
is
it
an
is. And I think it's like sometimes I was just having a conversation with a very well-known fashion stylist called George Cortino, who's become like a good friend. And, you know, I was like, do you think it's something like you're born with or you can like grow? And I think it's kind of something you're born with, but you got to like fine tune. Something you just got to be like curious about. I mean, like, you know, like right now it's not the representation. I was at work and like making things and I'm wearing, you know, I think there's like an outfit for every occasion. But right now I'm coming with a camo long sleeve shirt. I'm not going to like sit here and talk flex on like, you know, fashion etiquette right now. But yeah, I
But
think
you've
it's
had, I mean, let's go, because I know when you had your trailer and you were trailing, at one point you built that trailer, you've had shows all over the place, right?
Yeah, I
Like
know.
all over the world.
Yeah, no, I've designed for brands in Italy, for headwear, Borsellino, and Texas with Casey's, and you know, I've been able to like really create a beautiful lifestyle for myself. And the funny thing is like, you know, I grew up with 5 sisters, and they were all like amazing, talents. Like, you know,
Then you have what, 2 younger and 3 older?
Yeah, that's right. 2 younger, 3 older, and they're either like a musician, actress. Yeah, I'll have one in a sec. And you know, painters and guitar. Like, dude, and I would always look up to them.
Artists.
And dude, it wasn't until I was 27, 28 that like I got into the creative field, which is really, you know, bizarre. And I always say, like, for me, like my sisters are just like natural talents. And I think some people just have like natural talent. For me, I've had to like work really hard on my craft in order to like be creative. Like it's not, dude, I started making shit when I was 27, 28. Dude, I was in school for environment. Like it was very
Right.
late in life.
Yeah, that's
you know
true.
what I mean? Like,
You're right. And what was it that you started with? Was it hats or was it something before hats?
after all that, I worked for a designer in LA. His name was Christophe. He was a French guy who was doing like reproduction, World War I, World War II clothing. He was a very prolific vintage buyer. He'd have like the Ralph Lauren team and the J. Crew team and all these guys coming in to like, you know, get inspiration from his work and from some of the vintage stuff. And I was obsessed because that was like my passion. So like I knew of the guy and I went and met with him and I was like, look, man, I don't have any experience. I didn't go to school for this stuff, but like I love what you do and I want to work for you. He's like, well, the guy that was just working for me just like went to go work at Levi's. They like poached him. And like if you want to like come work for me, like you can. And
What were you doing?
so I was getting paid minimum wage. I was like working like in the office in the showroom, like on the second floor. And I was working next to this Guatemalan guy and I was like making suspenders, like, you know, learning how to put bags together, doing production, silk screening, helping them like make boxes, whatever the fuck I needed to do. But I remember being in this like in the summertime and like sweating and working on this industrial sewing machine and being like, I love this.
Wow.
And that like is like I think was one of the things where sometimes I look back and I'm like, I'm so blessed to do such a like have such a like amazing craft. It's like I get to do this. I don't have to do it.
Right.
And I feel like really lucky when I think that I've been able to be successful in my career and doing what I'm doing, because like I know a lot of people that like sort of like didn't roll the dice, like
Roll the dice.
You
So
know?
how old were you, do you think, when you rolled the dice?
I think it was like 28. Like I just like
You're like, fuck it, I'm doing this. But you
yeah,
didn't
and like
have
you
the
said,
hats yet.
it's like really arbitrary. It's like, man, it's like hats. But the thing is like at the time, like I was like, there's like a gap in the market. So when I was working for that guy, I had the naiveness and the gumption and the ignorance to be like, I want to start a business, not knowing anything, having no business acumen, just instinct and gut. And then I was like walking down the street and I met this cowboy.
Wait, but did you know what it was? Did you have an idea, or you just
No,
wanted to do a
until-
business in fashion?
No, I wanted to do something, and I wanted to do something in fashion. I remember that. And then I met this guy who was walking down the street, this like cowboy guy. And I was like, dude, where'd you get your hat? It's like amazing. Like I could
Where
tell.
did you meet this guy?
On the streets in Venice. And he was from Ohio. And he was like, I made this. I was like, what do you mean you made that? And me working in production, I was like super curious. He's like, yeah, it's all this like old equipment, and like really hard to get. It's a bit of a treasure hunt. And I'm like, who does this? He's like, there's like 30 people in America that do this old traditional way. And these hats are, made out of felt. They're really expensive. And, it's like these Western guys would spend, wait like a year or two, save up money in order to get like a beaver felt hat, which costs like $1,000. And it's like super expensive. I was like, 30 people doing this? Like, I want to fucking do this. Like, so I partnered up with the guy and we garnered all this equipment. And
With this guy?
yeah.
Wow.
And got like quit my job and like got all this equipment, and I was like a cat on a hot tin. I was like, fuck, dude, I just spent like 15-20K to buy all this equipment. I was like,
What were you thinking though? Because like, here's
I was thinking like, what the fuck am I
No,
doing?
but, like, what were you thinking?
Well,
like,
the thing
why
was-
did you go? Why did you go?
because I
can make
saw
money
that
on
there was
hats.
like a real gap in the market. It's like I'd look at headwear for the last like 40, 50 years, and it was the same thing. It was like brown hat, brown grow grain, black hat, black grow grain, but no one had like really modernized this category. And I like,
But are you thinking like this is going to be hats for like Western wear?
no,
Cowboys?
I don't know. I was just sort of like, like I don't know what I was thinking. I was, I wasn't thinking. I was
Wow, that's
I was
great.
just like passionate about it and just saw that there was like a really unique approach to it, and that I could take my like twist on it. And I think like, what you were saying in the very beginning of the interview, and I thank you for the nice compliment of like, saying that like I'm a formidable force in like hat making and all that. And like, I think there's truly like a line of demarcation of like hats before Nick Fouquet and hats afterwards. And I feel really like, feel a lot of pride that I've been able to sort of like in fashion, sort of like be able to help change like a category.
That's right.
And I think that like not many people can, as arbitrary as like headwear is, I don't know. It could have been, I mean, I was able to do something different, and I'm like super grateful for that.
And the interesting thing is what you recognize, I think, is that you said there was 30 people, right? And you had this instinct, obviously, to go, okay, there's only 30 people in America making these hats. I can get in on this. Like, I wouldn't have thought of that, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? You had some sort of business sense, I think.
Well, that's what my CFO says. I was
Right?
like talking to her because like, I think like there's like a natural, like, I don't know anything about business. And she's like, no, you really do. And like, you have good instincts. And I do pride myself on thinking like, actually, I have a good sixth sense on, a deal or people or a direction. And sometimes like I doubt myself, like everybody does or in business. But, I don't think I would make it this long and this far if I wasn't, didn't have like some business sense. So,
And then but the funny thing is when I was making jokes about your hat, right?
fuck you.
That guy, when
And I think like, keep
I
going.
was, I'm a clown. I'm always cracking up and saying shit. And I remember though, when I saw when I saw one of your hats, you were wearing it. You came wearing a hat to the meeting that we were in, and I got it. Right away, I saw the hat, and I go, oh. Because I like vintage, sort of I don't know what's the right word for it, Americana.
Sure.
Right? And I saw your hat, and there was a sort of a very unique, handcrafted, but worn look to it that you could tell. You go, oh, that's a hat.
Yeah.
Even for a layman like me, I go, that's a hat. Now I get it. And these hats, your hats they're not inexpensive.
No, I mean, they're not. But, I think that, like, people that might not be in the industry today can see the difference of quality.
That's what I'm saying,
and craftsmanship and seeing the personal touch in something that's
Yes.
really bespoke. And I think that's something that, like, more and more, like, I pride myself into doing, whether it's, like, anything that I want to touch. I really want to put, like, that craftsmanship feel, because to me, like, that's the value proposition into something that you're buying. Like, we're so inundated with so much fucking garbage and bullshit in the industry with, like, t-shirts off of production lines, denim off of production line. There's no more, like, uniqueness in the clothing that we wear. Going back to what I was saying earlier about, like, you're really telling a story about, like, what tribe you're with. If you're wearing, like, streetwear, or if you're wearing tailored suits, or if you're just wearing what you're wearing. And I think, like, we miss that, like, that unique, and you see it more in the culture today of, like, the young kids, where they're really buying a lot of vintage to sort of tell a story of, like, who they are, and, like, all those. And for me, headwear and everything I do, it's like, the more personal I can make it, the more unique and more appreciated it can be.
Which is true about your hats. Because the other thing, I looked at so many of your hat designs right online, and one thing that's for sure, not only are they just super bitchin', but each one is, like, totally original, and there's so many.
Yeah, man, that was fucking tough.
How do you, like, I was thinking, like, even I've been to your shop, right? And I've seen all the fucking hats, right? You got hats galore, right? How are you coming up with a unique design all the time?
I mean, dude, it's gonna sound like so strange. I just, I don't know. Once you get into, like, the groove and you're, like, making something, I just think, like, it's like a divine, like, whisper, or just like an intuition. And I know it sounds so, like, LA, like, whatever, just, like, kitschy or like woo woo or something. But, like, I think it's something it's maybe influenced by, like, film, music, movies, like, what will you? But I think it just also just, like, comes from, like, a place I can't really tell you. Like, it's just maybe from, I mean, I draw inspiration from so many things. It could be, like, a random guy that has no style walking, to, like, being in the ocean, and, like, being in nature, to, like, watching a movie, and all those things culminate into some sort of an inspiration. But sometimes it's like you're just working on something. And I remember, like, once, like, when I first started distressing, it was like, because it's part of the process to burn felt in a hat to make it smooth and silky. And I think I was, like, doing something else, and it started burning even more. And I was like, fuck. And I couldn't repair it.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to just continue to go deep dive down this alley. And it was, like, a happy mistake, because from there I was able to actually create, like, a whole other distressed genre of what I was doing from a mistake. And, sometimes, like, I pray for those mistakes. I'm like,
You're funny. You're when you're talking, describing your process of making the hats, just this little bit that you did, reminds me of my mother, who's an artist, as a painter. And it's you're talking about the same way she talks about creating a painting. She's going along, she's trying this, she uses a lot of coal and different materials, metal and all this stuff. And a lot of times for her, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, fuck, it's a mistake. And you just keep going,
And I think the creative process like that, in my experience, like, it's hard to sort of, like, pinpoint and be like, oh, this is the route to creativity. Because for me, again, like, the way I grew up, it was, like, super untraditional. And, like, yes, I was surrounded by my sisters, but, like, I like, it's just something, like, a bit ethereal. And the funny thing is like, I've been reading a lot on that process of creativity, whether it's like painters or whether it's musicians or whether it's like designers, and there's a pretty like common thread and theme on like how that occurs. I mean,
Yeah. You know, you mentioned growing up with your sisters and stuff like that. What was that like with all those sisters? You know, and you also talked about, you know, drugs and alcohol. That was obviously before the hats,
yeah, that was.
you know. But what was it like growing up with your sisters? All those sisters, and you're the only boy.
I mean, it was like a bit overwhelming, but you know, they were, you know, they were great. I mean, you know,
What are their ages?
I mean, one's like a year or two older than me. One's a year younger, and then there's one that's 10 years younger, and there's two more that are like 10 years older. So it's all pretty staggered. My dad had three different marriages, so they're all from different, but we all grew up together.
Yeah. So he's had kids with all three wives. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're from the second wife?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But
Were you close with all the wives he had, or?
yeah. It was,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, yeah, pretty much.
Then how did you get into the debauchery end of your life? It's because it sounds pretty.
I mean, let's just say like I had great examples of how to become debaucherous with like my parents, you know?
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I grew up in the southwest of France, so it's like I was like lighting my parents' cigarettes and pouring them wine and booze at like the age of
Well, that's
5 and
right.
6 and like sipping from that, you know?
That's right. You grew up in France.
Yeah.
Because your father.
'Cause my dad, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but like, yeah, you know, I think it was like rites of passages. I think like, you know, drinking and smoking and doing drugs is like not uncommon. It's just like, I think like when I found weed, I was like, oh, I had like arrived, and that like I felt, you know, I thought it was something that made me like deeper and introspective and more creative, even though at the time I wasn't so creative, but maybe I was kind of thinking I was, but it really just like got, you know, really isolating after a while. And that's what happens when drinking drugs and all that. You get kind of like, you know, in the beginning, it's like you're with people and having fun, and at the end, it just gets really lonely, you know?
Yeah. And then what age was it when you left France? Because you were also in Florida, right?
Yeah, I think I was about 7 or 8.
So you were in France from 7 to 8, and then you went to
To Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
Palm Beach?
Palm Beach, yeah.
And how old were you there?
Like from 8 to 14.
And then where'd you go?
I went to boarding school in New England.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I got sent away. Yeah,
Why?
family. My parents did.
They sent you away?
Yeah, I think I willingly did in the
But
beginning.
did they come to you and go, hey, you got to go, dude?
No, I wasn't like a bad kid. It was just sort of like what I had to do. This just the thing is, and I got kicked out of my first one because I, you know, was smoking weed, and then.
But what was boarding school like?
I mean, it was really tough in the beginning. You know, when you're 14 and you get sent away. I mean, that's fucking young.
Yeah, what
you
was
know?
that like? I mean, you're 14.
It was horrible because I went there like a week before the school started,
Yeah.
and because I thought I was wanting to play football, and I don't know anything about sports at all. But I was like, oh, I'll play football. But I was like, you know, like a fat kid with long hair going to boarding school, and I was like, I quit the football team like the first day or two because I was like, this is like
Wait, didn't you go to school with somebody that we know? Who went to boarding?
EB.
EB, that's right. EB, that's
Well,
right.
I went to the second of the all boys school with EB, and EB was like a year.
So you got kicked out the first one for smoking weed.
Yeah, for smoking weed, and it
Was
was
that
really
the first-
traumatizing. Yeah.
Were you at 14?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
What did your parents say?
Yeah, look, dude, like that's a whole other. They were out to lunch. Like my dad was gone. Like my mom, like they like.
That's why you're probably at boarding school, right?
Yeah, that's the
Make it
truth.
easier on them.
Well, also it was like it just, you know.
Were you out of control before boarding school or no?
No, it's super tame.
I know, I can't imagine. That's why I asked.
No, but they were like they had just like they went off were just it was just like I couldn't be at home. Like
Yeah.
it's just like no one was there, you know.
Right.
So I was
And
kind
not
of
older sisters.
no,
Well, they were probably gone, huh?
Yeah.
Out.
Yeah.
Grown up.
yeah. So it was. I went back. I remember, and I've ever seen the movie Dangerous Minds.
Yeah.
So like I came back, and the school that this private school wouldn't let me in. They were like, you got kicked out for weed. Like you can't come here. Like
Oh, so this is
so
a
I went
different
to
school.
a public school. Yeah, this was like after I got kicked out.
Okay.
So it was like spring, and I went to this school called Forest Hill High School, which was like really gnarly. Like if you're in Florida, like there's some areas that are just fucking crazy, like gnarly. And this one
Yeah.
I went to was Forest Hill High School, was like Dangerous Minds. It was like gang fights after school, and like I would like hide in the library because they called me Hanson at the time when Hanson was like a big band. Was the big band. I had like long hair and they would like sing Bop, and I was like, I'm gonna get my fucking ass kicked. So I'd have to go eat my lunch in the library because like
Oh, it's terrible.
yeah, but like I was gonna get fucked up. Like it was just
It's
like
so sad.
it was sad, but it was survival, man. Like, you know.
Can you picture poor, like, little fat Nick with long hair eating his lunch in the library? That's so sad, the image of that.
Yeah, no, it was like, I know every time I tell people that they have that, but I was like, dude, I couldn't get out of there quicker. And it was like.
Wait, but how did you get in that school? Did you tell your parents I'm going, or how did you get in that? You did it yourself?
I forget, man. I mean, I think like, yeah, just like enrolled, they like took me in. And like the crazy part is like I had like horrible grades that time because it was, I don't know. I just like I was traumatized. And then I got sent to this other school in Connecticut. And that's where, you know, we know EB. I think I met him like a couple of years later, but.
So
Yeah.
he was at the same school. This was a second boarding school
Yeah.
that you were at.
Yeah.
And how was that experience?
I mean, it's all boys school.
You
It's
made
like
it out of there.
Yeah, I
right?
made it out of there. And I mean, you
Were
know.
you partying? You had to do okay. It couldn't have been that bad because you got into college, right?
Yeah, I got into college, but I mean, I went to the University of Redlands out in San Bernardino. I was like, oh, I'm going to move to California. What?
That's where my friend went.
And I
Who
was
went
like,
there?
Tommy.
Oh, that's
Football
right.
at Redlands.
We've been there. I know where that is.
yeah, but I was like, oh, I'm going to go to California. I'm going to go surf. And I get there and they're like, yeah, it's like an hour and a half.
Oh,
to
you're in the
OD.
middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so it was like, you know, I made it work, but it was like, it was.
But what's amazing, I think, too, is like you continued on. I've had a couple of friends on here. We've talked about like Solo or guys that are somehow able to survive. Like you had some sort of survival mechanism that you kept going.
Yeah, I mean, look,
You know what
dude,
I mean?
I
You
think
got
like.
yourself into school, then you went into the second, and then you graduated, and you somehow got into
Well,
college.
yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I don't think about it, but it's like, you know, you're like forced to be resilient when you have to be resilient. Like, you know, it's like not an option. We're just survivors. And I, you know, from like the things that I had to go through with like my parents, man, I was sort of like left alone and I had to figure shit out for myself. And, you know,
right.
But like I didn't stay long at that school, and then I ended up going to like Patagonia for 5 months and like backpacking
Really?
and yeah, because I was like, this is not the place.
How
for
did you
me.
and why Patagonia?
Like, because it's funny. I'd left Redlands, and my dad had like this 55-year-old, 60-year-old like techno DJ that was his best friend that was living in Topanga.
Techno DJ.
Which is funny because that's where I live today.
Right,
But so I went to go stay with him over the summer, and we would get stoned together, and he was
your dad or the
my
DJ?
dad's best friend, who was the techno DJ, and he was the best. His name was Nico, French guy.
Oh, perfect.
And I remember being like, Nico, I can't go back to that school. I fucking hate it. And you know, I was like taking a lot of Klonopin and Xanax just to like get.
From Nico or with Nico?
No, at that school. And I was like, it was like getting really, really bad. I was like, I just can't go there. It's horrible. It's like, it's just not my vibe. And I was like, I really want to go to like Patagonia and like go there. He was like, yeah, bro, you should totally go there. And I was like, and I found this outfitter, this organization called NOLS, National Outdoor Leadership School. And I was like, fuck, it's like, I forget how much it was, like $3,000 at the time. And I remember calling my mom and being like, hey, Mom, I want to buy this jacket online. And this was like years ago. And she was super out to lunch. And so she like gave me her credit card number. And I paid. I called them up, got that, bought a ticket, got all my gear, got everything. And Nico, because Nico was like, you gotta go, you should go. So I like stole my mom's credit card and like went there. And it was like a transformational experience, and it's exactly what I needed. And I think that nurtured my love for the outdoors and nature. But it was like I get to Patagonia, one of the rainiest places on the planet, and I'm in there and I meet up. I go to Santiago, Chile, and I get there and I'm really sort of out of it. And the lady at the airline desk was like, you need to go to Puerto Montt, which is like another flight. And I remember back in the day, you could pay cash at the counter. And I got this other flight like that day, that minute, and met with the crew over there and like began that journey of like being in Patagonia and on the Chilean side. And like in a tent raining, and I was like, "What the fuck did I just like?"
How long were you there?
For about like 3 months, and then and it was like one of the most amazing, journeys of my life.
Why? What was it?
Well, just like
What did it do to you?
I think
Or for you?
it just told me how to become really, how to work with people. How to work with like a team, how to like cook. I learned how to cook for myself. Like, it taught me a lot of like life skills, and it was
Like what sort of life skills?
well, it's just sort of like hard to explain, but like I remember like this one instance, like there's a leader, right? There's like an older, like, there's like a couple older seasoned guys that are like bringing you through this like journey of like, mountaineering and kayaking. But there was this like one situation where we were like mountaineering, and this like one guy who's kind of like a bit of like a derelict who'd become like my really good friend. Like we were like going over this like pass, and I remember that he'd stopped and helped all of us get across. And like he was in the middle of this like the ravine or this stream, and he was helping us with our bags across like individually, like
Right.
And the leader was like, that's what a true leader does.
Wow,
He didn't
yes.
just like cross it himself. He's like, okay, guys, let's cross.
No.
He stopped and helped everybody across one
Yeah.
at a time. And it always stuck with me. I was like, that's what a leader does. He helps. Like he's a service. He does those things. And I think it was like that idea of selflessness for the first time I'd seen it. And I was like, it always stuck with me. And I was like, that's true leadership. It's
Yeah.
like helping others, not being self-serving. And I try to implement that in my work as much as I can, like nurture my team and like help them and be a service as much as I can, which I fall short sometimes, but like that situation was like, that's leadership skills,
Where did you go from there then?
I went to school in Florida, to a school.
But weren't you somewhere else after Patagonia? There was like another, or did you just go straight to Florida?
I went back to Florida and went to a school called Rollins. That's where I continued my degree.
So this is after Patagonia.
Yeah. And then EB, who we know, went to school there coincidentally. So I went to boarding school and college with them. That's how.
Wild.
Yeah, and we had a blast. Yeah.
And then do you think anything, do you think you take anything from the Patagonia experience into your hats?
I mean, no,
No.
not really, except for maybe like my true like love of the outdoors and
Right.
nature and the ocean and all that. So, no, but not really.
And your hats, I don't think a lot of people, or maybe they know, I don't think these guys, or Dylan does, but your hats.
Do you, Dylan? Do you know what I do?
But not just, but you make custom hats. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Wait a minute. Because you have a serious who's who list, which I think is pretty amazing, because that just shows you how sought after your hats are. Right? Because, like, can I name a few and see if I'm right?
Yeah, go.
Brad Pitt.
No. Oh yeah.
See?
Sorry.
Dude, you need me on your team. Brad Pitt. Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah.
Madonna.
Yeah.
Lady Gaga.
Yeah. You go. There's so many. I
There's
feel
so
great.
many.
I mean, there's like, Keith Richards, Bono.
Keith Richards, that's right.
David Beckham.
Now, and these are custom hats, right?
I mean, some of them are ready to wear, but sure. I mean, that was like the crazy thing. It's like I remember like talking about like the beginning. I remember like the first client I ever had was Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. Like
Wow.
the one of the first, and I didn't realize like what a legend that fucking guy was.
Because you're young.
Well, yeah, I mean,
would
I'd know who you would have known,
Oh,
but like
dude.
I also didn't know that's like who Jimi Hendrix was inspired by.
Right.
Like, you know, that's like the goat. But you know, I think
When you and how did they come? Like, let's say somebody like that, or
I mean, back then, you
How
know,
did he
there
find
wasn't
you?
really social media on like that level, and
Yeah.
then I utilized it as a tool as much as I could when it like really came to prominence and sort of like that the workplace. But it was like really like word of mouth, and like the cool thing with like what I was doing, especially at that time, was that like, you know, in terms of fashion, like headwear is like prime real estate, right? For like marketing and pictures. Like when someone got like Johnny Depp, or when I put it on Pharrell and stuff, like, and they got like a picture, whoever whatever was getting photographed, like you're not cropping out his head. You're gonna crop out like the
Right.
waist down. So no
Right.
one really ever knows like who makes the shoes or like the
Yeah.
pants, but they'll know who makes the fucking, you know, the eyewear and the headwear if
Yeah.
they're wearing it. So I think it's like, you know, just like really prime real estate for marketing.
But and I remember you did a collection with Brad Pitt,
Yeah.
which was not hats, right?
Yeah, it was a
Cashmere.
cashmere line called God's True Cashmere.
Right. And how did you get into that? So you went from hats.
Well, I've always like played around with like ready to wear. Like right now, you know, I work on, you know, primarily it's like my forte and what I'm known for is headwear, but I also like design footwear and I design jewelry and I've designed accessories and I've designed everything. But like my sort of trade is known in headwear. So like right now we're doing Beyonce, a lot of Beyonce's hats for her tour, because like that's the guy. It's like that's what I'm known for. Like that's like my craft. But like
Yeah.
I've been able to do stuff with like, you know, God's True Cashmere and design flannels and do those
Right.
things.
Which
So
are amazing. I've seen them and in person.
Yeah,
they're incredible.
yeah, I remember I showed you.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah. So
But when you, let's say Beyonce, like, so if Beyonce wants a hat, right? She comes to you, does she tell you, here's what I'm thinking? Or do you kind of say, here's what I'm thinking?
I mean, it's funny. It's like actually a good question because like when you work with people on that high end, like I think she's someone that's pretty involved, but at the end of the day, like they don't know what they want. So it's
Right.
our jobs, you know, and sometimes it can be frustrating because I'm like, well, what do you guys want? They're like, I don't know. And they give this obscure reference or this obscure color palette and you have to come up with it. And that's what they pay us for.
Right.
You know, as designers to design and come up with it. And a lot of times, like, they really don't know what they want. And you have to propose and sketch out and create and vision out options for them until they're like, oh, yeah, that's what I want. Like, they don't tell you exactly what they want,
Right.
unfortunately.
And do you make a hat and sometimes they'll go, it's not what I'm thinking. I'm not feeling it.
Yeah,
that happen?
sometimes, sure, of course. But a lot of the times it's like, you know, I get a brief synopsis of like what's needed, and I'm just like, you know.
But if you make something, this is a real question. I mean, maybe ridiculous, but if you make a hat, let's say, right, and somebody says, I'm not feeling the hat, I don't like it, do you have to eat that hat and start over? Or do you go, well, you know what, I made this hat and we said that, now I'm going to.
Well, you mean it depends. Like if I'm doing a custom for a client and we go over it, I mean that's what's like been agreed upon
Right.
and done because it's like a bespoke process. But when it comes to like the Beyonce stuff, for instance, I think we submitted like 7 or 8 different sketches, and from those
Wow.
they picked like 3 or 4. And once I'm like, then we you know we move forward with those. But like they're all variations.
Do
and
you
really,
sketch them?
I sketch those, and then I had a guy on my team sort of make them little bit more like digestible and palatable for like their team. Like I just like will quickly come up with ideation and do it, and then he would help me, you know, really formalize it and make it like look better. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm not a great drawer, but like
That's why I
try.
asked, 'cause that's a whole nother skill.
It's a whole other skill, and a skill I like. Yeah, that I wish I was a lot better at. But yeah.
So now what are you doing? Like, let's talk about this. You've been sober for how long?
I mean, it'll be 16 years, like in 3 days.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
In 3
on
days?
Friday. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing.
How did you come to that? How did you come to where you go, hey man, I got to get sober? What was it for you that you go, fuck, I can't do this?
I mean, it was
before the hats.
Yeah, it was. I think it was like a point where I think it just like, gotten, it's like I had like a really high bottom, and I just was feeling like my life wasn't really going anywhere. I was like totally lost. And there's like one incident where I had this girl come over to the house. It was like a couple girls, and I sort of said something that was a little off cuff for me. And I thought she was like sleeping. I was like talking to my friend. I said something pretty shitty, and she woke up and she's like, "You're a fucking asshole, and you have sisters. Like, how dare you?" In that moment, weirdly, I was like, what am I doing?
Right.
I was probably like, she's I probably hook up with her. She's a slut, like, or something like really ridiculous. Right. And she was like, I just heard everything you just said. Like, you're an asshole. God. And I think I was just sort of like, this is not the person. I know I said that, but that's not the person I truly am.
Right.
And it sounds like such a random thing to like had gotten you sober, but dude, whatever will fucking take you there, you know?
Right.
But like, I just was like, I think like from like looking at like my family and the history of it, like the trajectory didn't look so rosy, it's like right. I was like, yeah, this is like not going to be end well. So like in a lot of ways it was like it was not like a really demoralizing situation, but like it was inevitable that was,
but it was at your core. It hit you in the core.
Yeah
That's all it takes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then now, what's your life like now?
I mean, my life is fucking quite amazing. I like live in Topanga. I get to travel the world. I get to create for a living and support my lifestyle in that way. Like, got an amazing girl, and I don't know. Like,
yeah, you've been with your girl for a while, right?
Yeah, I've been for a while.
Right?
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of like I feel super blessed. I get to do what I want, and I get to do this. That's amazing.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, because you talked about before what you got out of Patagonia, which I think is so interesting, that key moment where the guy was moving, and what you said, which I was thinking of, is that what you saw this guy was being of service, And I know you as somebody who's constantly trying to figure out, because we've had so many talks about it, how to be of service with your employees and bring that into your business, which is key.
Well, I think it's like not a natural thing for me because of like my survival skills. It was like my family and what I had to go through. So sometimes I feel like I'd always need to be like selfish in order to like move forward and survive. But it's like really kind of quite the opposite. But it's not like my first natural instinct to be like, let me help you. It's more like how can, and it's just because of like circumstances of how I grew up. You get what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I mean, my first thought is always me. It just is. I always say, something happens to me, like I feel super serene and super sober by the end of the night, because I'm of service throughout the day. And I know that's my key, right? To be of service, to get out of myself. But if something happens, I always say at the end of the night, I take my will back at the end of the night, and I wake up in the morning, and the first thing I think of is I think of myself.
Right.
That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
I open my eyes, I think, what am I going to get? What am I going to do for Nick? And I have to get out of that and get into that place where the guy was who helped move those people. I mean, that's a great,
yeah, that's something
analogy.
that like kind of like was burnt into my memory and stuck. And I just remember that guy was I guess it was like the captain or sort of like the team, experienced leader was like, yeah, that's like, it was really cool. It was a really cool moment. There's weird memories and moments one remembers that like you stick with you. And that was weirdly one of them.
Yeah. And so what do you think now? Like, what's your, how do you stay in, let's say you're a guy that's a lot of times, I think, full of gratitude. You're a pretty good spirited guy. Do you know what I'm saying? What do you think that is? Like, what is it your go-to or your keys to try and stay in gratitude?
You know, I think like staying in
Because I know you're always working on it. I know you are.
Well, I think like that's the secret or that's the trick. It's like, you know, it's like you want to get in good shape, like you got to go to the gym every day. Like you can't have the intention of be like ripped and in good shape. Like you got to go, and it's like a lot of hard work and it's discipline. And I think like spirituality is sort of the same thing. It's like you got to meditate, you got to read, you got to write, you got to pray, you got to do all these things in order to be like in like a good state of mind. And you got to do that daily. That's the fucking trick. Like you don't come to like to this moment of like enlightenment and like you're done and that's all you got to do. To me, it's like gratitude and all those things like require like daily work, the gratitude list or reminders. I think it's like super important. It's not like you it's just like one day you're like good.
Yeah.
I think life's about like, you know, it's like the gym metaphor, you know,
Right.
It's like you gotta like work out the proverbial like, you know, muscles in order to like be in that place of like being happier,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's true. I mean, it's like, like I talked about, again, I'm always of self when I wake up, right? And if you're that guy, which I love that analogy, I keep wanting to go back to that guy because I can so vividly picture that. Dylan and I were on it and my wife and a bunch of people were on a rafting trip. Where were we? In Costa Rica. And it was supposed to be this like super mellow, you know, down this lazy river where you float down in inner tubes. And my wife set up for us. And there's a whole giant group and a bunch of old people too, like a bunch of older ladies, very out of shape. And we get there, man. And it's not a lazy river. It had some sort of radical rains. And this fucking river is roaring. And we get there, and these guys are like taking people in. If you could see, I could see in their eyes.
Like shit's hitting the fan.
They were fucking scared.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I go, oh, fuck, we're in trouble. When the guides are scared,
Yeah.
we're fucking in trouble. But what was amazing was they were like, fuck it, we're going to go. Everybody paid for it. And all of us dumb tourists really didn't understand how gnarly and dangerous it was. And so they started he went down first in this inner tube and somehow he fucking made it through, right? It was like a gnarly rapids. He went through on one side, he made it to the other side and then rope, and then everybody started going through. The athletic young people were making it. And all of a sudden the guy, like I went through and I got thrown off my raft and buried underwater, and I came up and I got out and the guy grabbed me and I go, I'm all right. Then all of a sudden he says to me, he goes, I need your help. And I was like, what? He goes, no, I need your help. Can you stay here and help me? This is the fucking guide, right? But I fucking stayed, man. And it's so funny how my fear, you know, thinking about myself and surviving myself I started doing what these guys were doing. I was helping these guys. And man, I'm gonna tell you something. These old ladies were fucking coming down and they would go over this waterfall and they would be gone.
Dude.
I swear to God, right, Dill? They were gone.
They were under the water?
They would go down and they were like, they'd get in like this. Like they're going down this, and all of a sudden they'd go. And they'd go, and the guy was having me and everyone else reach in the water to try and find them and pull them up. And they would pop out, old ladies would pop out like 15 feet down, all of a sudden come up, you know. But the amazing thing was, these guys, and like that guy, it was of service. And I realized at the end of that, I wasn't thinking about my own ass at all. I was just in the mode of like, we're saving these fucking old ladies, man. You know? And and my fear went away, you know? And it's kind of like what that guy, and I think in life in general, when I'm not thinking about myself, you know, and I'm of service to other people, all my little worries and fears are just gone. And all the things I think are important, they're not. They're not important. You know, it's like you have this incredible business, like you said, and you get to make this art, You know, each hat that you make is a piece of art, you know, like we talked about early. You know, and to be able to do that and then bring this guy into your workplace that was helping you across that, you know, that's what makes your business succeed. You know what I mean? And you go, wow, yeah, this is fucking great. Because if you're an asshole, we go through life as an asshole thinking about ourselves, or you're drunk or high, that business isn't going to take off, don't you think?
No, there's no way.
There's no way.
No.
So what's your morning routine look like then?
I mean, look, it's not like it's my routine. It's not always consistent, but I gotta say I'm like 5 for 7 during the week. I'd like to think, but like I wake up, I try not to look at my phone for the first hour of the day. Which
That's great.
Yeah, which I usually fail at pretty regularly.
But that's really good. That's a good one.
And I make my tea, and I stretch a little. I meditate.
How long do you meditate?
20
That's
minutes, 15 to 20.
Is your routine with the meditation, or
I mean, you know, I just like, there's no system.
Like, are you sitting?
Yeah, I'm usually sitting and just like, I don't even know. I've been doing it for so long and I never took a course. I don't even know if I'm fucking doing it right after 15 years.
I don't think there is any right way.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't have like a mantra or anything. I just really like stay seated. I try to focus on my breath, and a lot of thoughts come, and I just try to like let them pass and like breathe through and try to get back to breath. And then I'll try to do a little prayer and read and write. You know, I read different passages from different books, do some writing, and I go about my day. You know, and I've been doing that for like a long time, which is crazy. And I think has really helped with my creativity, my work, my business, and also just like me trying to stay cool, calm, and collected through the day.
Yeah. How about that, fellas?
Pretty sweet.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Dude,
I hope I did okay, guys.
Dude, that was thank you so much, Nick, my fucking friend.
Love you, dog.
I love you coming out. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, thanks. No, I'm super grateful.
Look at that.
Aloha.